The crash and the discovery. The stars were fading. Toby had seen enough crashes and wreckage in his life to recognize the signs, even from this far away. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, taking in the sight of the wrecked craft as it smoldered and twisted, half buried in the thick jungle that surrounded the outskirts of the mining colony. It was a long way from anywhere important, and it was definitely not the type of wreckage he usually came across. Could be a salvage job, though, he muttered to himself, scratching at the stubble on his chin. His voice was a low rasp, the kind that had developed after years of isolation on a dusty frontier world. He grabbed his gear and made his way toward the wreck, instinctively avoiding the dangerous terrain that could swallow a person whole without anyone noticing. As he approached the wreckage, something felt off. The wrecked ship was small, not big enough to be a freighter, and the markings on the side were unfamiliar to him. His heart rate quickened slightly, but he was a survivor, a mechanic who had lived on the fringes of society for too long to be intimidated by strange ships. There was a faint cry, barely audible at first, like the faintest whisper of a child's wail. Not possible, Toby mumbled. He crouched low, his instincts kicking in as he silently approached the wreckage. Pushing aside some twisted metal, his eyes widened as he saw it. A small alien baby, no older than a few months, lying in the debris. Her skin was a pale shade of violet, and she had strange, delicate features, with large dark eyes that seemed too wise for such a young child. Toby's heart skipped a beat. What in the hell? The baby's eyes locked onto his, unblinking. The silence between them seemed to stretch as the weight of the situation sank in. This wasn't just any alien child, this was someone's child. And they had left her to die. Toby hesitated, then made a decision. He couldn't leave her there. Carefully, he scooped the child into his arms, cradling her against his chest. Her body was unnaturally warm, and as he held her, something in him stirred, a protective instinct, even though he didn't know what this child was, or what she might mean. You're not dying here, little one, Toby murmured, his voice gentler than it had been in years. Not while I still have a choice. That's when he saw the strange markings on her skin. They weren't tattoos, they seemed to be some kind of bioluminescent pattern, glowing faintly under the dim light of the jungle. Toby couldn't help but wonder what the hell he had gotten himself into. An unlikely bond. Point of view, Toby Thorne. Toby had no idea what he was doing. For someone who had spent his life fixing engines and solving mechanical problems, being responsible for a living, breathing alien child was a whole new level of stress. And yet, here he was, sitting on the edge of his dusty cot, holding the small violet-skinned baby in his arms. He had already checked the wreckage for survivors, there were none. The ship had been completely obliterated in the crash. If this child was the only survivor, then whoever had been on board had either been incredibly careless or, maybe they had simply abandoned her. The thought made his stomach churn. Where do I even begin? Toby muttered to himself as he looked down at the tiny alien. She was quiet now, her large dark eyes staring up at him. She had a strange, otherworldly look about her, with long, delicate fingers and hair that shimmered faintly, almost like the starlight in the sky. The baby seemed fragile, but there was an undeniable sense of something powerful about her, a presence that tugged at the back of Toby's mind, like an echo of something ancient. He couldn't put it into words, but there was something about her that felt destined. He sighed, shaking the thought away. He was a mechanic, not a babysitter. And certainly not the type to get caught up in some intergalactic conspiracy involving alien babies. He set the child gently on the cot, carefully wrapping her in a blanket to keep her warm. He didn't know how long she'd been out there in the wreckage, but she looked exhausted, drained of energy. Toby had no idea how to care for her. She wasn't human, and as much as he hated to admit it, he didn't have the first clue how to keep an alien child alive. After rummaging through his stash of food rations, Toby managed to find a small container of nutrient paste. He wasn't proud of it, but it was better than nothing. Carefully, he scooped out a small portion and held it out to the child, unsure if it was the right thing to do. She seemed to sniff the air for a moment, her eyes locking onto the paste in his hand. After a brief hesitation, she reached up with tiny, delicate hands and grasped the spoon. Toby blinked in surprise. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered under his breath. She ate the paste, slowly at first, but then with more confidence. Toby watched in awe. She was already starting to grow stronger, to regain her energy. Her delicate features seemed to soften with each spoonful, and Toby found himself hoping, wishing, that somehow, he could help her. But just as quickly as the moment of peace arrived, the reality of the situation crashed down on him again. He had no idea who this child was, where she came from, or what kind of trouble he might be getting himself into by keeping her. The next few days passed in a blur. Toby did what he could to care for the child. He found some old blankets to keep her warm, a small stash of food to feed her, and tried to teach her basic human words in the hopes that it would help her adjust to the strange, new world she'd landed in. But no matter how many times he said, "Hello," or "Good morning," the child just stared at him with those huge, dark eyes, her expression unreadable. It was as though she was absorbing everything around her, every word and every gesture, but not quite ready to respond. Then came the first real sign that she wasn't entirely helpless. One afternoon, Toby was repairing the cooling system on his old freighter, something that had been giving him problems for weeks, when he heard a soft rustling from the doorway. He glanced over, expecting to see the alien baby, but instead, he found her standing there, her little fingers gripping the edge of the doorframe. "Toby," she whispered, her voice a melodic, almost musical tone. His heart stopped. She had said his name. Her first word. Toby dropped the wrench in his hand and rushed over to her, his heart pounding in his chest. Did you just say?" She looked up at him, blinking as if trying to understand the question. "Toby," she repeated, this time more clearly, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. He couldn't help but laugh. "Well, hell. Looks like you're picking up faster than I expected." As the days passed, it became clear that the baby, whose name, he had learned through an odd mental connection, was Kaylin, was far from ordinary. Her senses were sharper than any human child he had ever encountered. She learned at an alarming rate, and sometimes, Toby swore he could see a glimmer of understanding in her eyes that far surpassed her age. One evening, after he had fixed the comm system in his workshop, Kaylin sat beside him on the floor, playing with a small piece of metal that she had found among the scraps. Toby was about to start on a new project when he felt a sudden pressure in the air. It was subtle, at first, just a slight change in the atmosphere, but it made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He turned to Kaylin. Her eyes were glowing faintly, a soft purple hue that illuminated her features in the dim light. Toby didn't know how to react, but his gut told him that something was happening, something that he couldn't control. Kaylin held out her hand, palm open, and a small piece of metal floated up from the floor. She giggled, the sound light and innocent. Toby's heart skipped a beat. What in the hell? The metal continued to float in the air, suspended by an invisible force. Toby reached out, but the moment he touched the piece, it fell back to the floor. "Kaylin," he whispered, his voice shaking slightly. "What are you doing?" The baby looked up at him with a smile, her eyes now returning to normal. She seemed pleased with herself, as if she had just completed some great achievement. Toby's mind raced. What was she? What kind of power did she have? Toby couldn't keep ignoring it anymore. The truth was beginning to sink in. Kaylin wasn't just an abandoned child. She wasn't just some random alien that he had stumbled upon. She was different. And the more time he spent with her, the more he realized how far-reaching her potential could be. But it wasn't just Kaylin's powers that worried him. It was the fact that someone, somewhere, had left her to die. And that someone would eventually come looking for her. He couldn't protect her forever. Sooner or later, the past would catch up. Toby had always lived a solitary life, preferring to avoid trouble, but now, his days of hiding were numbered. He had a decision to make. One way or another, Kaylin's future was now tied to his. Whether he liked it or not, he was her protector. And as much as it scared him, he would do whatever it took to keep her safe. The search intensifies. Point of view, Toby Thorne. Toby's life had been quiet, predictable even, before the crash. He had spent years alone, fixing things and drifting from one job to the next. The simple, routine life of a mechanic on the edge of a forgotten galaxy. But now, with Kaylin under his care, everything had changed. His days were filled with the constant hum of fear that the next moment could bring enemies or forces he could not fight, all searching for the alien child in his home. His stomach twisted every time he heard a ship fly overhead. What if they had finally found him? What if someone was tracking them down? He didn't know how, but he felt deep in his gut that Kaylin wasn't just some lost soul. There was something much bigger at play. Something dark. He had tried to keep the situation under control, but the longer he spent with Kaylin, the clearer it became that her abilities were growing stronger. She was no longer the helpless baby he had found in the wreckage. She was intelligent beyond her years, picking up languages, solving problems with an ease that defied explanation. She knew things that no child should. But more than anything, it was the power. Kaylin was learning to control it. Just yesterday, she had made a cup float in the air, gently hovering above the table. Toby had never seen anything like it, an alien power, undoubtedly, but it seemed so natural to her. She had looked at him with those big dark eyes and smiled, as if it was the most casual thing in the world. But to him, it was terrifying. He didn't know how to protect her from that. Toby hadn't realized how much his life had changed until he woke up one morning to find Kaylin gone. His heart nearly stopped when he discovered the empty cot. Kaylin. His voice was hoarse, panic clawing at his chest as he ran through the small cabin. He checked every corner, every room, every possible hiding place, but she was gone. Toby bolted out the door, his pulse racing. The jungle beyond was thick and dark, filled with sounds of unknown creatures. He'd never let Kaylin venture outside without him before, not since she had started to show signs of her unusual abilities. She wasn't ready for the dangers of the planet. But now, she was gone. He didn't waste time. With grim determination, Toby grabbed his rifle, something he rarely ever used, and headed straight for the dense foliage. There were no signs of struggle, no obvious trails, but his instincts told him she hadn't just wandered off. His mind raced with possibilities. Had someone taken her? Had she run off on her own? Or was this the beginning of something far worse? It wasn't long before Toby found the trail. Small footprints, unlike any he had ever seen. The child's footsteps, light and delicate, but they were definitely leading somewhere. Toby followed the trail, trying to keep quiet, knowing that the wrong move could alert whoever was after Kaylin. The trail led deeper into the jungle, toward the clearing where he had first found the wreckage. As he approached the clearing, the sight of a familiar figure brought a surge of anger to his chest. "Lara," he growled under his breath. Captain Lara Devereux stood in the center of the clearing, flanked by two armed mercenaries. She was a tall woman, commanding in stature, with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. Toby had known her once, back when he had been hired by her to do a job years ago. But that had been before everything changed. Before Kaylin. Looking for someone? Lara's voice was cold, cutting through the silence like a blade. Toby's grip tightened on his rifle. "What the hell do you want with her?" Lara smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm just here for the child. You can step aside, Toby, and make this easy on yourself." Toby shook his head. "No. I'm not letting you take her. You think you can stop me?" Lara's tone was challenging now, the edge of a threat in her words. "I know what she is, Toby. Do you?" Toby's heart sank. He didn't need to ask her how she knew. He had a pretty good idea. There was a reason Lara was hunting Kaylin. She had a mercenary team, and someone had paid them well to find this alien child. The truth was, Toby didn't fully understand what Kaylin was. He only knew she wasn't human. She had powers he couldn't comprehend, and it seemed like there were bigger forces at work than just the local law enforcement. Lara took a step closer, her eyes glinting with a mix of curiosity and hunger. I don't think you realize the importance of what you're protecting, Toby. She's not just some orphaned alien. She's a key to something bigger, something that could change the balance of power in this galaxy. Toby's heart raced. What do you mean by that? Lara's smile grew. Let's just say that the child you've been hiding is more than just an innocent. She's a weapon, a living weapon. And the people I work for would do anything to have her on their side. Anything. Before Toby could react, he heard a rustle in the trees. He spun around, his rifle raised, but what he saw stopped him dead in his tracks. A man stepped into the clearing, dressed in dark, military-grade armor, his face hidden behind a helmet. He stood tall and imposing, his presence radiating power. Toby Thorne, the man's voice was deep and mechanical. You've been harboring a fugitive. Toby's pulse quickened. Who the hell are you? I'm Zaylin. I've been sent to bring the child back where she belongs. Toby's eyes narrowed. I don't know who you are, but if you think I'm going to hand her over to you, you're wrong. Zaylin's head tilted slightly, as though appraising him. I don't think you understand. The child is not yours to protect. She is a force that cannot be controlled. Toby clenched his fists, staring at the alien warrior. He wasn't sure what to do next, but one thing was clear, he wasn't going to let anyone take Kaylin without a fight. Kaylin was still out there somewhere, and now, Toby realized he was facing something far bigger than he had ever imagined. The stakes were rising, and the people after her weren't just looking for an alien child, they were looking for a power that could change the galaxy forever. He couldn't let them take her. No matter what it cost him. No turning back. Point of view, Kaylin. Kaylin didn't know where she was. She had been in the clearing with Toby, and then everything had gone dark. She wasn't sure what happened next, only that when her eyes opened again, she wasn't in the jungle anymore. The room she was in was cold, sterile, and unnervingly silent. She could feel the smooth metal beneath her fingertips, the soft hum of machinery in the air. She was lying on something soft, but it wasn't the familiar cot she had always slept on. It was a bed of some kind, nothing like the comfort of Toby's cabin. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to move. She wasn't sure why she felt this way, trapped, unsure, helpless. She wasn't used to feeling weak. Her thoughts were a blur, but she could still sense Toby's presence faintly in her mind, an echo of warmth. That made her relax, even if just a little. Toby was always nearby. Or so she thought. Sitting up, Kaylin scanned the room with her large, dark eyes. It was clean, clinical, like a lab, and the only thing that stood out to her was the cold, metallic scent in the air. The walls seemed to shimmer in the dim light, almost as if they were alive. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her core. This wasn't the place she belonged. The door to the room slid open with a soft hiss, and a figure appeared in the doorway. Kaylin stiffened, her body freezing instinctively. The person standing there was tall, imposing, and dressed in dark armor, a helmet obscuring their face. But there was no mistaking the tone in their voice. "You're awake," the figure said, their voice cold and unfeeling. Kaylin swallowed, but didn't speak. She didn't trust this person. Something about them felt dangerous. Their energy didn't feel familiar, unlike the calm warmth Toby always radiated. "Where am I?" Kaylin finally asked, her voice small, hesitant. "You're on a ship," the figure replied. "A ship belonging to the Syndicate. And you, child, are a very valuable asset." Kaylin's heart skipped a beat at the word asset. She didn't like the way it sounded. It felt wrong. "Where is Toby?" she asked, her voice growing a little more insistent. The figure tilted their head slightly, though their face was still hidden behind the helmet. Toby Thorne is irrelevant, they replied, their words clipped, like they were brushing off her concern. He is no longer your guardian. You belong to the Syndicate now. The words hit Kaylin like a slap. She didn't understand. She couldn't understand. She had been with Toby for as long as she could remember. He had saved her, protected her, shown her kindness when the world around her had been cold and cruel. And now this. Syndicate, whatever that was going to take her from him. No, Kaylin whispered, her chest tightening with panic. No, I'm not going with you. The figure stepped closer, the sound of their boots on the metal floor echoing in the room. You don't have a choice, child, they said softly, but the malice was there, hidden beneath the words. Suddenly, Kaylin felt something strange, a ripple in the air, like the faintest of winds shifting around her. Before she could even process what was happening, she raised her hand instinctively, a force she didn't fully understand surging through her. The figure flinched, stumbling back as Kaylin's power flared, her hand glowing with a soft, violet light. She was scared, she realized, but more than that, she was angry. Angry at the idea that anyone could take her from Toby, angry that she didn't understand the force inside of her that was growing stronger by the day. But more than anything, she was angry that she had been taken in the first place. Her anger powered her as she sent another surge of energy toward the figure, knocking them off their feet and into the far wall. The metal groaned under the impact, and Kaylin's eyes widened in shock at the extent of her own power. She had never meant to hurt anyone. She had never meant to feel this much. The figure recovered quickly, pulling themselves up and standing at attention. You're stronger than I anticipated, they said, their voice tinged with something almost impressed. But it won't matter. We'll make sure you fall into line, one way or another. Kaylin didn't want to listen to any more. The threat in their words made her skin crawl. She could feel her heart racing, the air pulsing with her energy. She had to get out of here. She had to find Toby. But before she could act, the door slid open again, and another figure entered. This one was different, more familiar. Kaylin's heart skipped a beat as she saw who it was. Toby, she whispered, her voice barely a breath. But the man who entered the room wasn't Toby. He was tall, wearing a long coat, his face cold and unreadable. He had a presence about him that made Kaylin feel uneasy, like he was more dangerous than anyone she had ever met. You have caused a great deal of trouble, the man said, his voice smooth but harsh, like gravel. I'm afraid there's no way out for you, little one. Kaylin instinctively took a step back, the air around her shifting as she felt her powers swell again, ready to lash out at the stranger. But the man didn't flinch. He simply stood there, his eyes narrowing in a way that sent shivers down her spine. I won't let you take me, Kaylin said, trying to steady her voice. Her hands were trembling, but her resolve was clear. No one would take her from Toby. Not now. Not ever. The man studied her, his gaze piercing. Then, he gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. You misunderstand. I'm not here to take you. I'm here to help you. Whether you like it or not, you are destined for something greater than this. You have no idea what you're capable of, but you will. In time, you'll realize that you're far more than a simple child lost in a crash. Kaylin frowned, confused. Who are you? I'm someone who knows what you are, he replied. And I've come to make sure you fulfill your true potential. Toby had no idea where they had taken Kaylin. The mercenaries had disappeared into the jungle, and no matter how hard he searched, he couldn't track them. His heart sank with each passing hour. He had failed her. He had promised to protect her, and now she was gone. But something inside him burned with the need to find her. No one was going to take Kaylin from him. Not now. Not ever. The battle for freedom. Point of view, Toby Thorne. Toby's hands trembled as he checked the control panel of his ship for the 10th time. No, it wasn't a mistake. There was no tracking beacon, no indication of where they'd taken Kaylin. His worst fear was becoming a reality. He had no way to trace her. He had spent the last 2 days combing through every lead he could find, but so far, everything had been a dead end. The mercenaries had covered their tracks well, and no one had seen anything suspicious in the jungle. But he refused to give up. Kaylin was out there, somewhere. She needed him. Toby gripped the edge of the table, taking a deep breath to steady himself. There had to be a way. He just had to find it. He couldn't let her down. He couldn't fail her like this. Just then, the ship's comms crackled to life, the voice on the other end unmistakable. Toby, I know you're looking for her. The voice was cold, smooth, and far too familiar. Toby's pulse spiked, and he swore under his breath. Lara, he muttered. What the hell do you want? There was a brief pause before Lara spoke again, her voice taunting. I could ask you the same thing, but it's clear enough you've been looking for Kaylin. And I'm guessing you haven't had any luck. Toby's grip tightened on the console. Where is she? Tell me where she is, Lara. Another pause, and then a sigh of mock sympathy. I wish I could say I'm surprised. But you're wasting your time, Toby. The syndicate has her now. There's no getting her back. Toby's stomach churned. The syndicate? So, this isn't just about finding her. It's about power, isn't it? What are they planning to do with her? Lara's laugh was sharp, cruel. You'll find out soon enough. She's more than just a weapon, Toby. She's the key to something much bigger. And once they unlock her full potential, there will be no stopping them. Toby's mind raced. The pieces were starting to come together. The syndicate wasn't just some random group of mercenaries. They were organized, powerful, and they had a very clear interest in Kaylin. She wasn't just some lost child anymore. She was the center of a deadly game, one that Toby was now deeply entangled in. You're not going to let this go, are you? Lara continued, her voice dripping with a mixture of amusement and disdain. I can't say I blame you. But you're too late. The ship has already left the planet's atmosphere. They're taking her somewhere she can't be reached. Toby's blood ran cold. Where? Tell me where. I'm afraid you're on your own for this one, Lara said, her voice growing distant. But don't worry, Toby. You'll get another chance. You just have to decide how badly you want her back. The comms went dead. Toby was left staring at the blank screen, his mind spinning. Somewhere she can't be reached. That was the key. Wherever Kaylin was, it was somewhere far from anything he knew. But there had to be a way. There always was. Kaylin sat on the cold metal floor of her cell, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her heart ached in her chest. She had never felt more alone than she did right now. The man, Zalen, had left her in the room, with no answers, no explanation. She had been locked in a small, sterile cell for hours now, and every second felt like an eternity. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know what the syndicate wanted with her, but she could feel it. They were planning something. Something big. And all she could think about was Toby. Where was he? Her mind was spinning with questions, but one thought persisted above all others: she had to find a way out. She couldn't sit here and wait to be used by people who didn't understand her. She had powers. She had strength. And she would find a way to fight back. A small voice in the back of her mind tried to reason with her, telling her to stay calm, to wait for help, but Kaylin didn't have the luxury of time. She couldn't just sit around and wait for someone to rescue her. The door to her cell slid open, and she stood up instinctively, her fists clenched by her sides. A figure stepped inside, Zalen. You're stronger than I thought, he said, his voice low and measured. But you don't understand your place, Kaylin. You think you can escape this, but you can't. Kaylin squared her shoulders, trying to appear defiant, though the uncertainty gnawing at her insides made her voice shake. I'll never be a part of your plan. I don't care what you want from me. I won't let you use me. Zaylen's eyes narrowed. You think you have a choice? You think you can fight what's inside of you? Your destiny is bigger than you realize. We've already begun the process of unlocking your true potential. And once it's done, you won't be able to stop what's coming. Kaylin's mind raced. Unlocking? What do you mean by that? Zaylen stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You'll see. Soon enough. As he turned to leave, Kaylin knew that she didn't have much time. She could feel her powers growing, her energy swirling inside her. The more she focused, the more she could feel it pulsing through her veins, just waiting to break free. She wasn't going to let them control her. Meanwhile, Toby was working tirelessly, digging into every possible resource he could find. Every ship on the planet. Every mercenary network. Every clue that could lead him to Kaylin. He was on the verge of losing hope when a sudden realization hit him. He couldn't do this alone. He needed help. Toby wasted no time. He contacted the one person he knew would have the skills and resources to track down a syndicate ship, a former ally, someone with a reputation for getting things done in the shadows. Her name was Rhea, a former intelligence operative who had disappeared after a botched mission years ago. If anyone could help him find Kaylin, it was her. He only hoped she would answer the call. The battle for Kaylin's freedom was just beginning. Toby would stop at nothing to get her back. And this time, he would make sure that no one, could take her from him again.